but we as a continent have now defined
This is TOSTV, your digital first Pan-African network. I am Adesu Al-Sui, and this is TOS News Track. The factional leader of Boko Haram, Abubakar Shekau, has released a new audio in which he addressed the newly appointed service chiefs. In the audio recording, Shekau told the security chiefs that they cannot do better than their predecessors did in the fight against insurgency. One by one, Shekau mentioned the names and the roles of the new service chiefs and called them to repent because they can't do anything to destroy his terror gang. According to Humangol, a source familiar with the activities of Boko Haram said the group is likely to conduct major operations to send a message to the new service chiefs that they are ready to fight. President Buhari on Tuesday, January 26, announced the appointment of new service chiefs. Meanwhile, reactions have continued to trail President Buhari's appointment of new service chiefs. Nigeria, one of Africa's biggest economies, has in the last decade been plagued by issues of insecurity, especially in the northeast, Niger Delta, and more recently, southwestern parts of the country. With victory against insurgency, terrorism, and banditry elusive and significantly deteriorating since 2017, Nigerians have constantly questioned the efficiency of the country's armed forces and service chiefs. To this regard, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday, January 26, announced the immediate resignation and retirement of its service chief, as well as reappointment of new service chiefs for the armed forces, an act that trailed mixed reactions from citizens, including senior advocates of Nigeria, who frowned at President Buhari boycotting approval from the National Assembly. Reacting to the new development, Mayowa Tijani, business and development editor at The Cable, who was a guest on TOS TV's breakfast show, The Conversation, while emphasizing on the commitment of the new appointees to tackling insecurity in the country, reiterated his faith and confidence in their abilities and capacities to serve, especially the Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Lucky Irabo, who he said, going by his exploits with Boko Haram, should have been made the Chief of Army Staff instead.
I have a lot of faith in some of the appointments, but specifically the Chief of Defense Staff.
Okay.
In 2017, I went to Maiduguri to report some stories about the insurgency. I spoke to some members of the military. I spoke to some victims of Boko Haram attacks. And at the time, it was clear that this particular Chief of Defense Staff was quite in charge of the war against Boko Haram. He was the one, as we know, who recovered Sambisa forest and, of course, brought down the flag of the Boko Haram at the time. So he's someone that, in fact, in my newsroom, we call him Boko Haram's nemesis. But my feeling about it was that he should have been made the Chief of Army Staff.
Army Staff and not Defense Staff.
Not the Chief of Defense Staff, yes. Of course, these newly appointed persons are going to try to exert themselves on the system. They are going to work within their own networks. They are going to work with their own soldiers. Of course, as we have seen in some of the videos on social media, the morals of the officers are now high, and they are willing to even give more to this battle. And of course, having worked with the Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Irabo, we see that many of these officers are particularly excited because of the kind of system with which he led the team when he was working with the Operation Lafia Dole. I know for sure that he was always, from time to time, going with the troops to the battlefield, which of course is not something that is
making suggestions on the immediate point of call for action by the new service chiefs. He had this to say.
First thing for the Chief of Army Staff is to ensure there's peace in Borno State. But there's peace in the northeast. They can flush Boko Haram. That's one. Then about the bandits, of course, we know that this is one of the problems that is emerging in the northwest region. So if we can also deal with that decisively within, say, 40 days, and then we can see results. Nigerians can, at this point, Nigerians trust that, oh, something different is about to happen.
Yeah.
So if we can leverage on the first 40 days and make something happen, then the trust that Nigerians have in the security apparatus would return gradually. It's not a
Staying with appointments of security chiefs, Ohanaeze Ndigbo General Assembly Worldwide, OGA, has urged President Buhari to consider appointing an Igbo as the next Inspector General of Police. The group was reacting to the President's appointment of new service chiefs, Lucky Irabo, Chief of Defense Staff, Ibrahim Attahiru, Chief of Army Staff, Awal Gambo, Chief of Naval Staff, and Isiaka Amau, Chief of Air Staff, on Tuesday. In a statement by its President General, Onwara Onyachonam, the group said President Buhari excluded Igbo from the appointment and urged him to appoint the most senior Igbo in the force as IGP. The group also wrote the Police Service Commission asking it to, among other issues, deliberate on who succeeds the current IGP and address what it called Igbo exclusion and other glaring injustices in police promotions. In the letter to the commission signed by Emeka Umeagbalasi, board chairman, Chinwe Umeche, head Democracy and Good Governance, and Obianuju Joy Igboeli, head Civil Liberties and Rule of Law, the group urged the commission to correct all marginalization in the force, particularly on promotions, noting that Adamu is due for retirement on February 1st, and 3 digs, 10 AIGs have reached retirement age and are expected to go with IGP Adamu. The group said there are a number of other senior police officers who are part of the Nigeria Police Management Team chaired by the outgoing IGP. In a related development, the Police Service Commission has approved the promotion of 20,356 senior police officers. 9 Commissioner of Police were promoted to the next rank of Assistant Inspector General of Police, and another 9 promoted from the rank of Deputy Commissioner to Commissioner of Police. The promotion is one of the decision of the 11th plenary meeting of the Commission held in Abuja on Wednesday, January 25, 2021, and presided over by its chairman, retired Inspector General of Police, Musli Smith. The Commission also approved the promotion of 3 Chief Superintendents to Assistant Commissioners of Police, 1,577 Deputy Superintendents to Superintendents of Police, and 2,293 Assistant Superintendents to Deputy Superintendents of Police. It also approved the promotion and confirmation of 7,283 confirmed Assistant Superintendents to Assistant Superintendents of Police, 9,072 Inspectors to Assistant Superintendents of Police, and 110 Inspectors promoted to Senior Inspectors. Chairman of the Commission, Smith, called on the newly promoted officers to see their new positions as a call to more commitment to the duty. He noted that the Commission will continue to ensure that promotions are regular and based on the relevant rules and regulations. Latest report on abducted Chibok girls held by Boko Haram insurgents since 2014 has revealed that some of the girls have escaped. A parent told Daily Trust that some of them were contacted by officials handling the girls' disappearance and that the affected parent might be invited to Maiduguri on a later date. Halima Ali, who was married off to Boko Haram commander under the instruction of the insurgents leader Abubakar Shekau a few months after their abduction from their boarding school in Chibok, is believed to be one of the escapees. It was gathered that after the news broke, friends and family members trooped to the family house of Halima to congratulate the family on the good news. Secretary of Chibok Parents Association Lawal Zana also disclosed that he was informed that some of the girls had escaped, but is yet to ascertain the number. Mariam Ali, Halima's sister, Amina Ali, Rankia Tiha, and Solomi Titus, were some of the Chibok girls who escaped. Before the release of 21 and then 82 following negotiation with Boko Haram, making a total of 107. This is your digital first Pan-African network, TOSTV network. You are watching TOS News Track. Still ahead, international stories. Do stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. This is TOSTV News Track, and we move to stories we are tracking across the continent, where the African Union AU has secured an additional 400 million doses of coronavirus vaccines for the continent. As it stands, the AU has already reserved and those to be made available via the World Health Organization-backed COVAX scheme, bringing the total for Africa to 1.27 billion. Africa needs about 1.5 billion doses to immunize 60% of inhabitants, the threshold for herd immunity. Most nations have not started vaccinating, lacking funds to do so. Initiatives to help them have struggled to put in orders as wealthier countries are accused of bulk buying vaccines. Earlier this week, South Africa's leading coronavirus expert, Salim Abdul Karim, remarked that such behavior was unconscionable, warning no one is safe until everyone is safe. The rollout of mass vaccination programs across Africa may now begin in March, though not all supplies will be available by then. According to the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, John Nkengasong, the bulk will arrive later this year and next year. The latest announcement of 400 million doses is of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine from the Serum Institute of India. No details were given about cost. Some African countries are also doing direct deals with vaccine manufacturers or have received separate donations. In a related development, Morocco has received 500,000 doses of China's Sinopharm coronavirus vaccine as it prepares to be the first African country to roll out a national immunization campaign. The consignment is the second batch to arrive in Morocco after 2 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured by India's Serum Institute. The government has announced that it will first start vaccinating health, security and teaching staff this week and has launched a website for other people to register for the vaccine. The country signed a deal with Sinopharm in August, which involved conducting clinical trials in Morocco, as well as announcing plans to set up a production plant. King Mohammed V and China's president had also discussed vaccine cooperation, and in September, Morocco agreed a deal to buy AstraZeneca vaccine doses. Morocco plans to vaccinate 25 million people, or 80% of its population, within 3 months. However, health ministry officials say that with increasing global competition for vaccine doses, Morocco's ability to roll out a wide-scale national program depends on the steady flow of supply by Tuesday. Morocco had recorded 467,493 coronavirus cases, including 8,187 deaths and 14,483 active cases. Meanwhile, South Africa's Health Minister Zweli Mkhize revealed Thursday that the country is expecting the flight carrying its first 1 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to arrive on February 1st, boosting efforts to curb a second wave of COVID-19 driven by a more contagious variant. Mkhize said that after the 1 million doses arrive at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg, they will be subject to technical processes, including quality assurance over a minimum of 10 days and a maximum of 14 days. After that, they can be distributed to all provinces. Mkhize added, South Africa is due to receive a further 500,000 doses from the C in February, also for its healthcare workers. It later stands to receive around 12 million doses from the COVAX Global Vaccine Distribution Scheme, co-led by the World Health Organization, another 12 million from an African Union arrangement, and 9 million from Johnson & Johnson. Mkhize spoke at South Africa's main opposition party. The Democratic Alliance launched court action to force the government to release details of its vaccination plans. South Africa has recorded the most coronavirus infection and deaths on the African continent at more than 1.4 million cases and over 41,000 deaths to date, and has been battling a second wave of infections dominated by a more transmissible coronavirus variant called 501Y.V2 since late last year. The AstraZeneca shots produced by the Serum Institute of India, SII, are destined for the country's sorely stretched frontline healthcare workers. Some scientists and healthcare workers have publicly criticized the government for not securing doses sooner or outlining detailed immunization plans. Medicines regulator SAFRA said on Wednesday it had given fast-track approval to AstraZeneca's vaccine for emergency use and that it was reviewing data on the short of rival manufacturers Pfizer and J&J. Staying with development in South Africa, where its wine industry has asked the court to allow the main wine-growing region to exempt itself from a ban on the sale of alcohol that was reinstated last month to ease pressure on hospitals during the COVID-19 pandemic. Vinpro, which represents wine producers and sellers, said it had approached the Western Cape High Court to seek interim relief from the ban, which would allow the Premier of the Western Cape to regulate the sale of liquor in the province. Vinpro said the restrictions on alcohol has resulted in the loss of more than 8 billion rand, about $524 million in sales, and threatened the closure of sellers and producers. It also warned of a lack of cellar space amid low demand and increased stock ahead of the new harvest season beginning this week. South African Brewers is also challenging the alcohol ban in the court. The case is expected to be heard in court next week. In December, as COVID-19 infections surged, the government introduced its third ban on alcohol sales since the start of the pandemic, aimed at preventing alcohol-related injuries that could further strain hospitals. South Africa has recorded the highest number of COVID-19 infections on the continent, with over 1.4 million reported cases and nearly 42,000 deaths. This is your Digital First Pan-African Network, TOSTV Network. You are watching TOS News Track. Still ahead, more international stories. Do stay with us. It's still TOS TV News Track on your Digital First Pan-African Network, TOS TV Network. Here are more international stories we are tracking at this time. U.S. President Joe Biden has reversed a ban on federal funds going to international aid groups that perform or inform about abortions. He said the ending of the so-called Mexico City policy reverses former President Trump's attack on women's health access. The memo orders a review of a Trump-era policy blocking funding for U.S. clinics that offer abortion referrals as well. Biden also signed an edict expanding the Obamacare insurance program. In a statement earlier, the White House said Biden was issuing the presidential actions to support women and girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights in the United States as well as globally. A report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office released last year found that in 2017, NGOs were unable to receive around $153 million because they chose not to cut back on abortion programs. The report found 54 occasions in which NGOs did not accept U.S. funds due to the policy. Biden has also instructed the U.S. Health Department to immediately consider removing Trump-era restrictions to a domestic family planning program for low-income Americans known as Title X. Biden on Thursday also removed the U.S. from a 2020 resolution known as the Geneva Consensus, a non-Biden charter of more than 30 countries that oppose abortion. The actions to begin undoing Trump's abortion and healthcare legacy comes on the eve of the annual anti-abortion March for Life protest, which has been held virtually on Friday. In 2020, Trump made history by becoming the first sitting U.S. president to appear at the rally. It also comes amid legal battles over abortion, as several mostly Republican southern states passed local regulations that drastically cut back access to the procedure. Staying with more developments from the White House, the Iranian foreign minister tweeted on Thursday after Washington demanded Tehran reverse its breaches of the pact first, that the United States should act first by returning to world powers' 2015 nuclear deal with Iran that it ditched in 2018. New U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken reaffirmed on Wednesday President Joe Biden's policy that Tehran must resume complying with curbs on its nuclear activity under the deal before the United States rejoins the pact abandoned by former President Donald Trump. The JCPOA is the nuclear deal's official acronym, and Zarif was again accusing Washington of having illegally barred humanitarian imports to Iran after Trump reimposed sanctions on Iran. While Tehran had breached limits on uranium enrichment activity only in response to Trump's repudiation of the accord. And now to U.S.-China relations, where UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Thursday he hopes there will be a reset in U.S.-China relations, acknowledging that while the countries had different views on human rights, they should work together on climate action. Beijing has been pushing for greater global influence and a challenge to traditional U.S. leadership. Tension between the two superpowers hit a boiling point at the United Nations last year under former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration over the coronavirus pandemic. New U.S. President Joe Biden's nominee for ambassador to the United Nations accused China on Wednesday of trying to drive an authoritarian agenda at the 193-member world body. When asked for a response, Guterres said, "In relation to the United Nations, I can guarantee that we are very strongly committed to make sure that the UN is a beacon of all the values are related to security, development, and human rights." Guterres also said he was particularly worried about the power of social media companies and that a regulatory framework should be created so decisions such as banning Trump from Twitter can be done in line with law. Meanwhile, China toughened its language towards Taiwan on Thursday, warning after recent stepped-up military activities near the island that independence means war and that its armed forces were acting in response to provocation and foreign interference. Taiwan, claimed by China as its own territory, reported multiple Chinese fighter jets and bombers entering its southwestern air defense identification zone last weekend, promoting Washington to urge Beijing to stop pressuring Taiwan. China believes that Taiwan's democratically elected government is moving the island towards a declaration of formal independence, though Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen has repeatedly said it is already an independent country, called the Republic of China. Its formal name, asked at a monthly news briefing about the Air Force's recent activities. Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Huan said Taiwan is an inseparable part of China. While China has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control, it is unusual for Beijing to make such overt, verbal threat of conflict. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council said China should think carefully and not underestimate the island's determination to defend its sovereignty and uphold freedom and democracy. The weekend, Chinese incursions coincided with the U.S. carrier battle group entering the disputed South China Sea to promote freedom of the seas. China routinely described Taiwan as its most important and sensitive issue in relations with the United States, which under the former Trump administration ramped up support for the island in terms of arms sales and senior officials visiting Taipei. President Joe Biden's government, in office for a week, has reaffirmed its commitment to Taiwan as being rock solid, potentially arguing further strains with Beijing. Taiwan has denounced China's threats and efforts at intimidation, and Tsai has vowed to defend the island's freedom and not be coerced. This is your Digital Affairs Pan-African Network, TOSTV Network. You are watching TOS News Track. Still ahead, entertainment and sport. Do stay tuned. South African multi-award-winning music superstar who graced stages across the world with megastars Simongile Khumalo has passed on. Many of her fans took to social media to pay tribute to the 63-year-old musician whose voice was used for many occasions, including birthdays, weddings, and funerals. Her music appealed to different generations and race groups. Khumalo received lots of praise for her work in opera classics. She was also honored with Order of Ikamanga for her outstanding contribution to music, arts, and culture. Her devastated close friends were still trying to make sense of her passing. Details surrounding her death have not been disclosed. In South Africa, Khumalo's recorded music with the likes of the legendary trumpeter Hugh Masekela and nurtured many upcoming musicians. She performed for Nelson Mandela at his 75th birthday. Khumalo's enthralling singing talents ranged from opera to choral music, jazz, and musical theater, all while staying grounded by the traditional sounds of South Africa. The singer took her talents across the globe from 1992, performing at esteemed venues such as the Royal Festival Hall in London, the Hert Music Theatre in Amsterdam, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., as well as every major theatre and jazz club in South Africa. Many fans of jazz music have hailed the singer's voice as one of the finest natural instruments out of Africa on display anywhere in the world, drawing audiences with its visceral presence, sheer warm timbre richness, and expressive nuances of emotions. Khumalo also took her talents to the opera, performing the title role in Mzilikazi Khumalo's Princess Magogo Kadinuzulu, presented by Opera Africa and performing with the Cape Town Symphonic Orchestra. The singer's passion for music carried on into education, with Khumalo inspiring the new generation of South African singers, songwriters, and opera performers through mentorship and performance programs at grassroots levels and through tertiary education. In 2016, Khumalo released her anticipated studio album, Breath of Life, 7 years after her last album release. Khumalo's death comes a few days after the passing of another legend, trombonist Jonas Gwangwa. And now to sports, and we'll start with basketball, where Nigeria announced a preliminary squad for the remaining of their Group D of the qualifiers campaign in preparation for the upcoming second leg of the Afro Basketball Qualifier. 7 new players were added to the preliminary squad, including Joshua Ajayi, Zaid Hurst, Abdul Malik Abu, Christian Mekowulu, Michael Ogwine, Ami Okonkwo, and Nicole Enabosi. Nigerian Basketball Federation NBBF Vice President Babs Ogwade said the federation was working round the clock to ensure the Tigers have a smooth outing in Tunisia. Away from the sport of basketball to wrestling, where the Nigerian Wrestling Federation NWF have announced plans to get the country's wrestlers ready for the Africa-Oceania Olympic qualifying tournament from April 2nd to 4th and the preceding 2021 African Championships from April 6th to 11th, both in El Jadida, Morocco. Team Nigeria wrestlers returned to action for the first time in almost a year at the recently concluded Baraza Champion of Champions tournament in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, South Nigeria, which was held from January 15th to 18th. Speaking on behalf of the Federation, President of the body, Daniel Egali, disclosed that the wrestlers would commence preparations for the double header in Morocco with the forthcoming National Sports Festival in Benin, Edo State from February 14th to 28th, before going into an intensive closed camping in Yenagoa a week after the festival. The world and Olympic champion added that the plan is to have each wrestler compete in about 15 bouts prior to the qualifiers in Morocco. World number 2 in 57 kg women wrestling, Oduayo Adekuroye, is the only Nigerian to have qualified for the postponed Tokyo 2020 Games, which runs from July 23rd to August 8th this year. However, the NWF is hopeful at least 7 more wrestlers will join her to Tokyo for the Games. At the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Nigeria paraded 7 wrestlers. And that is TOS News 360 on your digital first Pan-African network. For more updates, visit www.tostvnetwork.com. Do follow and like TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember to subscribe on YouTube. TOS TV is also available on TSTV as TOS News on channel 138. Do stay with us and enjoy more programs on TOS TV Network. I am Adesuwa Osuyi. Bye for now.